Blog Talk Radio.
Everything begins with an honest, open conversation. The Empire is exactly that place, and you can just weigh in, listen, or debate with others about topics ranging from childcare, sex, religion, and politics. We talk about the things that matter, the things we experience, and we make plans for how we can better live with change. Real talk, real people, real issues with real solutions. Call 646-478-5625 every Sunday and Wednesday at 8 Central on Blog Talk Radio to get Empire with the Empress. Or you can log on to www.blogtalkradio.com/The Empire, where the Empress speaks and the Empire listens.
Yep. We're on. Welcome. Welcome to the Empire. It is Thursday, March the 26th, 2015, and tonight on the Empire we have a special guest, Mr. Ciccone. See, now I lost your last name. Ciccone, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I messed up your name. Yes. Okay, so Mr. Ciccone, Priest, we have you here tonight. We're going to talk about the man because, you know, they have been telling me forever that I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a man. And I have to actually admit that I cannot understand men. I think that's the biggest riddle of the world. It's not love or anything else. It's just figuring out what is going on in y'all's head. But we're going to have you be a vocal point, maybe, or maybe the expert of manness, the representative of your species tonight. And we're going to talk about that in just a little. We're going to talk to Ciccone tonight about that whole man move. First of all, could you please introduce yourself to the audience so that they'll know who we're talking about and where your level of expertise comes from? Ciccone?
Okay, well, thank you, Empress. This is Ciccone Prince of CicconePrince.com. I'm a motivational speaker based out of Mobile, Alabama. I've been doing motivational speaking now for approximately 2 years. Prior to that, I owned a 3D animation company for 12 years called 3D Solution Providers. And we did 3D animation for local businesses here in the Mobile area as well as government entities. And as far as expertise, I guess I have to get a little bit into my background. I'm married, and me and my wife have 5 kids. The oldest is 27. The next oldest is 19. The next oldest is 15. Then we have a 13-year-old, and we have a 7-year-old. Wow. So needless to say, yeah, I know they are spread out, to say the least. That actually, it gives me a lot of material for my motivational speaking, at least from the standpoint of I have had to learn how to talk to a 27-year-old. I've had to learn how to talk to a 19-year-old. I've had to learn how to talk to a 15 and 13 and 7-year-old, and to communicate to them on all of those levels. I find myself having to kind of switch gears sometimes in the middle of a stream because I'll be talking to someone, I'll be talking to a 19-year-old about something, and then I have to talk to the 13-year-old about something. So I find myself always having to make those sort of adjustments and juggles.
Well, let me ask you this to start with. I'm assuming you got girls and boys in there. And
yes, I have 3.
I'm assuming 3 of which?
Well, I was going to say that we have 2 boys and 3 girls, and the boys are the bookends. So the oldest and the youngest, the oldest boy is 27, the youngest is 7. Then we have a 19-year-old daughter, a 15-year-old daughter, and a 13-year-old daughter.
Wow. So we're hanging out in the middle. That to me, I just think about this in any topic, in anything that we discuss. You can't beat on the job training. I mean, it's not a whole lot that anybody could probably teach you about what you're having to live on a day-to-day basis, because, I mean, that's just what you do. Would you say that because I was asked this question by a male who has a daughter who's 11. Now, my daughter is 9, but he asked me what I should do in a situation that he's having with his daughter. Before we get into the topic, do you think do you expect that people will be able to give advice just simply because they're in that mode, or is it independent of experience? Like, where do you I know you say you draw your speeches and possibly directions in your speeches from your experiences, but is it always the right advice? Does it even mean the same thing for the two different ages of daughters in your own home?
Well, one of the things I really try to do, especially with my kids, is, you can oftentimes use examples of people in faraway countries and lands, far, far away, and oftentimes they don't really see the connection. But when you have someone, maybe a family member, or maybe a church member, or maybe one of their classmates who has gone through something similar, and you can draw from that experience, that's what I found that really makes it more relevant for them, when they can actually say, yes, I know somebody who did that, or I know somebody who is going through that. I actually know somebody. This is not a fictitious character, but this is somebody that I actually know, and I see the struggles that they're having. As far as the amount of experience, even with talking with other people, I've learned that you can learn from everybody. I mean, you really don't know what people have gone through or what they have dealt with, what sort of background they have, and they can offer you advice. And my thing is, if it fits, if it's the solution to the problem that you're having, use it. Don't just limit yourself, to in fact the people that you think, this person has the answer, this person has. I mean, you can learn something from a homeless person as well as you can from the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So I've learned never just look for your answers in one particular place or even from one particular person. You have to have an open mind to at least be willing to listen to what someone else has to offer. And like I said, if it fits, use it.
It's amazing that people, because I had this one woman who was all the time giving me advice on my children during the time that I was divorcing. They were very, very young. Actually, they were just beginning elementary school. One was in pre-K and one was in the first grade, and she was giving me all this good advice, and it was sound, but I didn't know until years later that she didn't have no kids. And it was like, oh my God, like how could she even know that? But that actually reinforces what you just said. And tonight we're not particularly sticking with kids, but with the man, that's just, to me, it's hand in hand. They go together, and you gave to me an outline which was wonderful because it gets me to try to stay focused, because sometimes I'm all over the place because you could say one thing and it'll make me think of something else. So this actually was great. And just the order of what you sent me was shocking. And if you want to share the different bullet points, we could do it that way. But the very first thing on this outline says husband. And I thought that curious. I do understand it from multiple perspectives, but I want to know why. Point A says, before you find a wife, you need to find yourself. Is every man to be a husband, or does husband and man come synonymously? Well,
I'm so glad that you asked that question, because it really gives me an opportunity, first of all, to say that although I did this outline up, it was more so for me to help me stay on track as far as the points I wanted to make. Because like you, the type of things come up, in fact, your mind starts to wonder, and we call it chasing rabbits. A rabbit pop up, you chase it over there, and then another one pop up, and so you're all over the place. But as far as the actual order that I put this in, because, and we'll go through through each of these, but I wanted to talk about at least these 3 points. 1, being a husband, 2, being a father, and then 3, being a mentor. And the reason that I put husband first is, well, as I mentioned that, like me and my wife, we have 5 kids. My oldest son was a product of a high school, in fact, relationship. And so, consequently, I had a child when I got married, in fact, to my wife. And just to keep it real, because I know that you can't help people by, by not being honest. Even me and my wife's oldest daughter, she was in the wedding pictures, if that says anything.
Okay. Right.
Because she was born in November and we got married in December. And so, she was actually in the like wedding pictures. And the reason that I wanted to actually stick with this outline, because I know, and I love my wife, I love my kids, all of that, but I realized that there was something that we forfeited. There was something that we gave up by putting the cart before the horse, if you will. We really didn't have a chance as a couple to really get to enjoy each other without the responsibility of kids, without having to find a babysitter, without having to worry about, do we have enough money for, milk and Pampers and for daycare. We didn't have that opportunity. I literally, when I got married, when me and my wife got married, it was instant family. We were, in fact, we were dating, of course, prior to us getting married, but for lack of a better term, I just jumped into the deep end of the pool. I had a wife and I had a new baby. So we really forfeited a lot of time that could have helped us deepen our relationship. And just being able to just kind of go away for the weekend, without having to really, be concerned. It amazes me how having a child, it changes your thinking.
Yes.
And I'm going to get to that a little later, but just even if you go somewhere, you realize, okay, I can't do anything stupid and get myself locked up because I have a child.
Right.
You tend to make your decisions based around the fact I have this responsibility. In fact, whereas if you don't have a child, if you don't have that sort of, in fact, responsibility, well, then, in fact, you may take more risks, or in fact, you may go other places and, do other things. But when you have someone that is looking to you for their livelihood and for you to look out for their best interests, your whole mindset changes as far as what you can and what you cannot do. And so that's why I was saying about how as a husband, in fact, before, you find a wife, in fact, you need to find yourself. I've oftentimes said that one of the best things that you can do for everybody around you is to know who you are. I actually quoted, in fact, Mark Twain today, in fact, where he said that the 2 most important dates in your life is the day you were born and then the day you knew why. I'll say that again. The 2 most important dates in your life is the day you were born and then the day you found out why you were born. And that's what I mean about finding yourself. A lot of people don't take that time to actually find out who they are, why they're here, and their purpose. If you haven't figured that out, and I know for myself, I'm speaking from my own experience, that it's been a journey for me, even having a wife and, having a child, even having that instant family, I was still in that process. And to me, the outline, in fact, that I gave, it helps because it allows people an opportunity to become, I know they say that there's no I in team, but there are individuals on a team. And in order for it to be the best team, you have to have the best individuals working as a team. But oftentimes what happens is we don't take the time to get to know who we are. And because of that, we bring a broken individual into a relationship with, unfortunately, sometimes, most of the times, another broken individual. And that's not saying that you have to be perfect to get married, but you at least need to know who you are and where you're going in order for you to make the determination, okay, am I hooking up with the right person? Are we going in the same direction? Do we have some of the same goals, dreams, and aspirations? And if you never answer that question, then it may not be a good idea for you to get married. That's why I said that, before you find a wife, you need to find yourself. As far as men, we need to take the time to really solidify who we are.
Right.
I oftentimes use the example that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Just amen.
Okay. I've said that, if someone were to walk in the room, in fact, that I'm in right now, and say, okay, I need every woman to stand up, I'm not going to move because I know that I'm not a woman. And see, if you know who you are not really overly concerned with what doesn't apply to you. And so that's one of the things that I try to help my children understand. Don't let the world tell you who you are. You tell the world. I don't care what they label you. I don't care what they call you. I don't care what name they put on you. If it doesn't apply, if it doesn't match up with who you know you are, you can leave it on the ground. Leave it where they live. Don't pick it up. Don't claim it as your own. And so that's what I mean about finding yourself or knowing yourself. Our slogan at SaconaPrince.com is introducing you to yourself. Because, as I said, if you ask the average person if they know themselves, they're like, yeah, I know myself. Yeah. Why would you ask me that? Well, then you start asking them questions. Well, why do you do this? Or, why do you act like this? Why do you respond, so harshly, in fact, when you're stood up or when no one returns your calls?
Right.
Or why is it somebody being late just cause you to just fly off the handle? And sometimes people use the lame excuse, well, that's just the way I am. Well, in reality, there's a history behind that behavior, and they have yet to actually find out or just take the time to go back through their life and find out why. This journey for me started when I was in college. And I'm going to be real vulnerable and real transparent because I know, as I said before, people can't be helped, if you hold back.
Actually, that's wonderful because that's what we do on the Empire. We're about transparency. We're not trying to get in your business. But I think that the more honest that you are, the better the message. I mean, it just is absorbed so much better. So I knew you was good on this. I knew it was going to be good. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, when I was in college, I noticed a pattern, with the young ladies I was dating. And it started me to question myself. And the pattern was in 80% or in the relationships that I was in, 80% of the time, the woman was the one that ended the relationship. I found myself I was hanging on for dear life. Unless they were, key your car crazy and bust your windows out. I was there. Yeah. I was there hanging in with them, trying to make the relationship work. And then I started questioning myself. I said, Sakona, why is it that, you hang on for dear life? What is it about being in a relationship? What pushes you or what drives you, to the point to where, you won't, or it's hard for you to let go? Now, I do want to say this. In a way, that can be a good thing and that can be a bad thing. It can be a good thing if you latch on to the right thing, but it can be a bad thing if you latch on to the wrong thing. So the same thing that can be your strength can also be your weakness. But I started that process of trying to figure out why is it that I had a hard time. I was just so forgiving. I would, keep giving chance after chance. And I started to look at my own history. I started to look at my own upbringing. I started to look at my own relationship with my mom. And I, discovered several things that really it helped me understand why I did what I did. Not just the fact that I did it and that's just the way I am, but I started answering the question, why is it?
Right.
I remember hearing this interview with Tyler Perry, and he talked about how he was in a situation, he was dating this young lady, and, you know, they had gone out to dinner, had a good time, came into his place, and, you know, kind of one of those things that one thing led to another sort of thing, and she turned off the lights. Well, like when she turned off the lights, he got upset. I mean, he got hard. I mean, he just got so frustrated and just so angry to where she had to turn the lights back on and she had to calm him down. And she asked him, she said, you know, why is it, you know, what happened? And through some counseling and talking, he admitted that, well, he had been like molested as a child, and that every time it happened in the dark. And so when the lights went out, that triggered that. And so he had somewhat of an involuntary response. The reason that I use that example is because there are things in all of our lives that we do that get on our nerve, that push us to the edge, or that will have us clinging or holding on to something that we should be letting go of. But we need to understand why. We need to take the time to understand why. And oftentimes we don't do that until we've been put in a position where somebody holds our feet to the fire or makes us mad or makes us upset.
Right.
And then they tell us in that heated moment, and we take it defensively and we never deal with it. My thing is, why wait until you have been called out on something, or why wait until, you know, you've been put in the back of a police car to admit you got a problem? If we take the time to actually look at ourselves, and I mean really start asking ourselves, why do I do that? Why does that upset me so much? Why do I have a problem, you know, with the person that lies? You know, is it because I was lied to as a child and no one ever came through? Or you know, so and I mean, in fact, the list goes on and on as to the things, but if we never take the time to ask the right questions, you'll never get the right answers. And most of the times we're looking at the people. I'm sorry, go ahead. What
people are saying, and I just wanted to not forget this point that you just made me write down. You said that you know, if we do it in the right order, then it's just a better happening. You're able to have an experience with that woman, the person that you chose to be with. But when you have this ready-made family, you have to combine all of these responsibilities together. And I'm not an advocate of people getting married because they're pregnant or because their mama told them to, but actually I was that way before, and that's exactly why I got married the first time. I got married because he asked me, and I knew I was doing some of the stuff that married people would do. I never had a pregnancy scare, never had any of those types of things, but I just knew that there was a certain way that things were supposed to be, and I thought that would equal out to fixing it, and I didn't have a clue of who I was. So is it okay to say that a man can still be a man if he chooses the child and not choose the woman? Is that fair to say?
Well, I would say yes, but you know, and of course, again, being somewhat vulnerable. In fact, my mom and dad, like, they got divorced when I was 2 months, so I never had my dad in the house with me growing up. And in a way that was good, and in a way that was bad. It was good because you know, when it came to being a husband and a father, I had a blank page. I had nothing written on, which to me was helpful because it then allowed God to actually figure that out for me, as opposed to having a bad example in the house. And it's like a sheet of paper. You could take a sheet of paper out and you could write an essay on it. And then you could take an eraser and you could gently erase everything that you wrote. And you can clean it off and blow it off and dust it. But if you hold that piece of paper up to a piece of paper that hadn't been written on, they won't look the same because of the impressions and because of the indentions that have been made in it just because you wrote on it. And see, the fact that my father wasn't in the house, there were a lot of things that I didn't get exposed to, which, you know, actually wound up, as I said, I had a clean slate to where then I could have the right stuff put in that spot as opposed to me writing down the wrong stuff and then have to come back and erase it and then try to put the right stuff in that spot. So, but I guess to answer, you know, your question, I know that, you know, there are situations and circumstances, you know, in fact, which happens, I'm reminded of this one young man, in fact, that I know that he has a child, and he wasn't in a relationship with the young lady or anything. She just asked him to help her move and stuff, and I guess, you know, that's why, anyway.
Wait a minute.
Wait. She just asked him to move.
You are not telling me.
Listen.
Come on now. Really?
But see, what I'm saying is this, is that there are circumstances and situations that have happened and that has been a result. But to answer your question, as far as, you know, being in fact the man that he needs to be, when you realize that, okay, you have a responsibility, that takes the place of, you know, your agenda. I tell my kids all the time, if you make a decision to bring a child into this world, and most of the times it's not, hey, I want to go have a baby, but it's, hey, I'm having sex.
Right.
And then you wind up getting pregnant.
Right.
I said, if that's the case, I want you to take your right finger, and I want you to push pause on your life for 20 years. Just push pause on your life for 20 years because it's not about you anymore. It's about the child.
Right.
You know, everything that you know you wanted to do, all your hopes and dreams and goals, they get on the back burner, if not put back in the refrigerator, because now it's not about you anymore, but it's about the child. And that's the approach that I took with my oldest son. And that was, okay, look, I have a responsibility now. I can't, for lack of a better term, just piss my life away. I have a child that I have to provide for. So I started distancing myself from people who are not trying to do anything. Like, they're not trying to go anywhere. And you know, it's not like I was trying to be funny or anything like that, but, hey, look, I have a responsibility. You don't have a child. You graduated high school, okay, fine. You can just, you know, just go from here to there, but I have to get it. That's why I went back to school. After I finished high school, I got my associate's degree in electronics. And then after that, I went and I got my bachelor's degree in electronics. So the driving force for a lot of the success that I have right now, you know, was my responsibility. And there again, going back to my own upbringing, being raised by a single mother and seeing just how much she struggled. I never wanted my child or my children to go through that. I even tried to reconcile with my son's mother. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I did everything I could to be in his life in order so that he would know what a man was and what it meant to be a man. And now I can tell you right now. I'm sorry.
Well, you just said you just said I gotta just kind of sidebar on that when you said that you tried to reconcile with the child's mother all the time, knowing that you just really were trying to be present for that child. It was nothing about her. I'm not saying you didn't like her or anything. I'm just saying, like, is that a good reason to go back? Because I think, on a woman's perspective, like, women do that all the time. That's why you got so many crazy baby mama stories from the guys. She crazy. She's a baby mama from hell and this and that. And it's because she's not over him. The baby happens to be with her, but she's not over him. So is it okay for a man to go back when he really don't want her? Like, would you advocate that? I'm just asking because I don't know.
Well, and I can only speak for myself and speak for the situation that I found myself in. I never wanted my kids to grow up in the house without me. I never not wanted to be in their life. I always wanted to be there, and because of that, I made a concerted and an earnest effort, in order to actually mend or rectify that relationship. And at that time, we were still kind of in the ballpark, if you will, of having a relationship. So, I didn't want to just say forget it and I'm moving on. But because I had a responsibility, and going back to what I was saying about not wanting, my child, to be raised, without my influence, I did make that effort, in order to go and try to rectify the situation. Now, and I know everybody's situation is different. There are different circumstances, and I can't speak for everybody. Because every situation is historically different. But I know, for me, I knew the pain of watching my mother do everything she could, and she did a wonderful job, by the way, raising me and my sister. But I just remember just a feeling of helplessness, when I saw her, struggling, deal with bills and just try to fix stuff around the house. That really, I never wanted my wife to actually deal with that. And so, because of that sort of upbringing that I went through, I found this out, that I have a phobia of not being there for my family. If I go somewhere like on a trip or something, if I can come back, just a couple of hours earlier, if I can catch an earlier flight or come back a day early, I do, because of the care and the concern I have for my family, and I do attribute that to my upbringing and to seeing stuff that my mom went through, and me just kind of saying within myself, I don't want my wife to deal with that. I don't want my kids to have to go through that. And so that it went into making me who I am. So there are some individuals, they don't have a problem with just moving on, going to the next, but you have to realize that you are leaving broken pieces of individuals if you have that mindset. People are, there's a trail of blood behind you. If you're leaving child after child after child, or relationship after relationship, and there are consequences to that. And I can remember that even that decision that, me and my oldest son's mother made, it's been rippling through my life ever since. There have been times when just that one decision over 28 years ago, it's been rippling through my life ever since, just causing hurt and heartache kind of over and over again. But you don't think about that at the time. But as you look back over it, and we've all heard the statement, if I knew then what I know now.
Lord have mercy. We would not learn. We would just take for granted, I think. Everything is for a reason. I cannot, for the life of me, and I'm not supposed to, know why circumstances had to take this. But I participated in it, too, now. Like, listen, I don't like to blame at all. And I think when you're young, you can't be, you had to be just about a teenager having this other baby, because you ain't that old. So you
17.
were just being, right, you were just being what it was to be 17, which is to be irresponsible, which is to try to mimic adult behavior. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what people do at that age, and unfortunately, the responsibility still is just as heavy, regardless of what you meant to do it and not. It just is, and it's made you who you are today, for sure.
True.
But
True.
you have here on here, starting a family, understanding how the marriage works, and with children. Like, how in the world did you even figure that out? Because you had, there's a definite separation of roles. I know as a female, as a mom, I never got that whole wife thing down. Never. Like, I was married for 10 years. I know how to do housework. I knew how to cook. I knew how to provide for those children, and I knew how to make a work list of getting things done. But I'm not sure if that was the marriage. I'm not sure that either men or women know that. What does that mean for men, understanding how marriage works when you got these children?
Well, I know we live in a day and age where people are trying to redefine marriage. And, I'm not here to talk about that. But what I am here to talk about is what I know that has actually worked for me, and that is using the biblical definition of marriage. Because if someone comes kicking on our back door in the middle of the night, everybody's going to line up behind me. They're not going to line up behind my wife. I don't expect any of my kids to be out front. Everybody's going to be looking to me because why? I'm the man. Being able to, to protect and to provide for my family, are some of the things that, I take to heart. I mean, I take it as if, okay, this is my responsibility. This is my obligation, to be the breadwinner, to provide. I can't even imagine going to my wife right now, and I'm in my mid-40s, saying, hey, look, I think I'm going to stop working. I think I'm just going to retire and just stop working. And I know she's going to look at me like, and what you going to do? You're
going to get out of here.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, for me, as far as understanding how marriage works, there are certain goals that have to be, at least in my mind, set and kept when it comes to marriage. There's a scripture that I like to reference. It's in the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 25. It says, "Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it." That's Ephesians 5 and 25. And I mean, to me, those are some big shoes to fill. Because as I look at everything that Christ did for the church, he didn't just come and die, but he came and he showed us how to live. And even with his disciples, even though he talked a lot of time in parables, and he gave he preached and he ministered and gave speeches, his disciples, they would come to him and they would ask him stuff, and he would explain more to them than he did to the masses. And what that said to me is that as a husband, I need to make sure that my wife understands what's going on, where we're going, what we're doing. I need to make sure that I invest in her, that I take that time. There was never a time that the disciples came, Jesus asking a question, and, he really scolded them, just like, get out of here, what's wrong with you? But he took the time to communicate to them. And that's what I took away from that. As a husband, I need to make it a point to communicate with my wife. Okay, this is what's going on, or if there's a situation that comes up, and it's not that I don't listen for her input or listen to her input, but anything with no head is dead. Anything with two heads is a freak. Okay?
Yes.
I listen to her. I find her take on it because oftentimes she sees stuff that I don't see. But, when it comes down to it, in fact, the decision that is made, I take responsibility for it. Even if I chose to go with something she suggested, I still take responsibility because the buck has to stop somewhere. Right. And so, and I'm gonna get into this a little later, in fact, when we talk about the kids, because I came up with something that I hope all of your listeners who write down. In fact, it's very helpful when it comes to help actually like raising kids. But talking about the marriage and understanding how it works, just understanding your roles as a husband, as a wife, and like I say, for us, we take the biblical roles or like the biblical definition, and that becomes our blueprint and our plan as far as how we are going to operate as husband and wife. We don't make any major purchases. In fact, without talking to each other, we have a shared checking account. That causes us, we have to communicate because, if I need $20 worth of gas and we got $16 in the account, and I thought we had $50 in the account, when I go to get the gas store, like, so it forces us, in fact, we have to communicate, but that actually helps us as we are going somewhere, as we're building a life together, as we're raising the kids, as we are becoming one flesh. The Bible says that the husband shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall be, and that's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. They shall be, and I mean, it's a lifelong endeavor. Because you never really graduate because you're changing, he's changing, or she's changing, and so if you never really keep that constant communication, I mean, things that were important to me as a child aren't important to me now. I live 3 minutes from the mall. I mean, literally from my driveway to the parking lot of the mall is 3 minutes. When I was a child, I remember saying to myself, I just wish I had a Saturday off with a pocket full of money and I could go hanging at the mall all day. Now, I don't even want to see the mall. I mean, I have the money, I stay close to it, but that's not a priority for me right now. And so that's what I'm saying, that, those thoughts I had as a child, they didn't translate, and that's not important to me anymore. And so just being able to communicate that, because as you grow and as he grows, then your relationship should grow. And not just about just the tangible stuff, but I mean even some of the dreams and hopes, aspirations, being able to travel or being able to go back to school or being able to start your own business, talk about those things to your spouse. I mean, because you have help. And, you can help each other in those areas.
Now, if you are a single person with no children, you're not married, does manhood get defined only if you have those things? I mean, I just think that you can, but I think part of purpose is to leave legacy. Of course, everybody can't have children, but it's not all in the birthing process. Do you think it's okay for men? Because I'm gonna tell you, I did a show probably last year. I'm not sure what time of the year, but there is a growing number of sound in education, sound in vocation, men who are straight, but they're choosing. They are literally choosing not to have children, not to get married, and it's almost like it seems selfish to me just because maybe I'm just a woman. But is that like an option of man? Like, are you really full tanked up as a man when you don't have any other responsibility but yourself?
Well, and this, of course, is my opinion.
Right.
But, most men, or the average men, not all, they want to accomplish something. They want to have something that they can say, I've done. And if it's not in the area of, marriage and with kids, most of them throw themselves into their career or into their own endeavors, their personal endeavors. It may be their hobbies or something. So to answer your question, manhood is not necessarily, defined by being a husband, being a father, and everything that comes with that. But manhood can quite honestly be defined as being responsible. And if you don't mind, I want to jump a little bit because, we can come back to that. In fact, that really, it brings me to a list. And in fact, this is just not for men, but this is just for people in general. It's something that I oftentimes tell my kids. I actually gave them 3 words, and those words were broken down by age, by an actual age range. And you want to write this down. From birth, write it down. From birth to 7, from birth to age 7, the word that I found myself telling my kids over and over and over again was wait. Wait, just wait. Be patient. Wait, just wait. Just wait. Just give me a minute. Just wait. Don't, just be patient. Just wait. Well, from age 8 to 14, the word that I said to them most of all was think. Think. Why did you walk in the door and let it close? I'm coming behind you with an arm full of groceries. Why did you? Because you weren't thinking about anybody but yourself. Think.
And
just
what's
take
that word
the time.
again? You saying? Oh, think. Think.
Think. Yeah, think. THINK. Think.
Okay.
Sometimes it's like, if it's not happening in 5 minutes, or if it's not 3 feet from them, they're not thinking about it. You and I, if we're standing out on the street talking and 2 blocks away, this walk wild or jumps the fence or break loose, we're going to run. Because, first of all, we can't move as fast as we did when we were younger. We're not going to wait until he gets to where we are, then try to move. We're going to make it a point, okay, look, we need to start moving now before it gets to us. But like I said, and not every child goes through this, but for the most part, this is what I've experienced, is that a lot of times their brains are working, but they're not putting them in gear. They're not engaging.
Right. They're
and
not
so
connecting the dots.
Exactly. And oftentimes, instead of just telling them what to do, I start asking questions because why? I want to get them into the habit of thinking because guess what? When you leave the house, I'm not going to be there to tell you what to do. You are going to have to come up with your own decision and come to your own conclusions. And if you don't learn that now, you're going to have a hard time when you get out. The third word from age 15 to 21 is responsibility. Because if you learn how to wait and you learn how to think, you'll be able to take responsibility for your actions. Not just the good ones, but even the not so good ones. Not just the flattering ones or the ones that get you the applause, but even the ones where you messed up. I tell them all the time that the mark of maturity is being willing to take responsibility for your actions, good or bad. And see, most of the times, if they don't wait and if they don't think, they have a real problem with taking responsibility because, they realize that, okay, I'm in this position that I'm in because I didn't wait or I didn't think. And like I said, I'm speaking from experience myself. I tell my kids all the time, I'm not perfect. And, I've been open and honest with them because just because you fall in the ditch and you get out of it and you're embarrassed, don't let your child who's coming down the same road fall in the same ditch and not say anything. You don't have to go into all of the details and name names and, all of that. But what you do owe them is a warning. I've oftentimes said that if you get on Interstate 65 North heading from Mobile, if you keep driving, you're going to get to Montgomery. I don't care how fast or how slow you go, you'll get there. And it'll tell you, like Montgomery, 168 miles, Montgomery, 142 miles, Montgomery, 89 miles, Montgomery, 30 miles. If you keep on Interstate 65, eventually you're going to get to Montgomery. So I don't care how fast or how slow you're going to get there. So even with the kids, even with helping them through that process, not only did I give them those words and I keep telling them over and over again, but I also use this example. I tell them, I say, look, I'm not raising kids, I'm raising adults. They were like, what do you mean? We're not adults. I said, okay, do you wait till you get to school to put your school clothes on? They said, no. I said, do you wait till you get to church to put your church clothes on? They said, no. I said, do you wait till you get in the pool to put your bathing suit on? They said, no. I said, well, you always get ready somewhere else, right? They said, yeah. I said, well, you don't wait until you become an adult to learn how to be one. I said, now is the time, and this is the place where you learn the lessons, the skills you need to take care of yourself when you leave the house. I'm not just trying to be a mean ogre and just, make you do stuff that you don't want to do. I'm trying to help you understand that the world that you're going into, they have a certain expectation of you, and that you've been taught these things, and that you've learned this stuff, that you learn how to read, that you learn how to think, you learn how to take responsibility. Because there are a few things worse than having an adult that is impatient, that can't think things through, and they won't take responsibility for their actions. So trying to help my kids understand, okay, look, we're going somewhere with this, because you're not going to be staying with me when you're 40. Okay, I'm not staying with my parents. You're not going to be staying with me. One of my kids said, no,
my daughter,
I'm going to stay here. Huh?
My daughter says that. My daughter says that right now. She's like, Mom, and I really feel bad sometimes about it, because she says that she does not want to get married and doesn't want to have kids because I'm not wanting to get a divorce like you did, and I don't want to be like you. I'm just going to live with you forever. And I was like, no, you are not. You're just not. First, I'm trying to get you out. I tell them all the time that I have to make them ready to be adults, but for some reason men get it from men. They get it from the male voice, like even discipline. Y'all can say the same thing we said. And for some reason it sticks a different way because it's from the man. And I don't know if it's just the base. I don't know.
Well, it's backed up by actions. I mean, most men aren't going to talk a whole lot. If they love you and they're patient, yeah, in fact, they may say it a couple of times. But after that, even in the military, they have a hard drill sergeant, and then they have one, that's kind of takes the mothering role, because they know that you have these young people, and sometimes the first time they're being away from home, and so they need someone that's going to be hard and tough on them, but they also need somebody that they can talk to. Everybody can't be hard, and everybody can't, be soft. There has to be that sort of balance. And even with my daughters, and I love my daughters. I mean, I love them to death. But I know that I don't serve them any good by allowing them to get away with stuff that I know that they could do better. Because I want them to succeed. And that's one thing I keep telling them. I say, if anybody wants you to succeed, it's your parents. Because you succeed indirectly means they succeed. And so I'm not going to tell you anything that's going to cause you to fail in life. I may tell you some stuff that you don't like and some stuff that's going to, for lack of a better term, kill your buzz. But the reality is I want you to succeed. I want you to be ready for the life that's waiting up. And because of that, I am going to be hard. I am going to be tough on you because I love you. In fact, we've all seen those posts about being home, in fact, when the street lights came on. And I know that there were guys that didn't apply. I mean, they could be out there still playing football and playing baseball and, shooting marbles and riding their bicycle. But we had to be home. Certain of us had to be home. And those guys that did not have to be home at that time, look for them now. Most of them you can't find simply because they didn't have somebody there to hold them accountable, to hold their feet to the fire, to make sure that they did what they needed to do. And so that's what, even being a father, that's one of the things that I try to help instill within my kids. And going back to the original question, about being a man, in fact, without being a husband and without being a father, it's just being able to take responsibility, for your life. To me, that is the essence, and that is the definition of, being a man, like being able to actually take that responsibility.
You got here on your sheet under mentor. Your children are not the only ones that need help. What do you mean by that?
Well, there are other kids that need to have what their parents are telling them reinforced by someone else. Because you and I know well that everything our parents told us, we didn't take it the first time they said it. And most of the times, they said it several different times, and we still didn't get it. But it took somebody else outside of the house coming along saying the same things that they said. I remember talking to my oldest son and sharing some information with him, and I told him, I said, look, don't take my word for it. I said, I want you to go out and you find somebody else that you know and respect, someone that has your best interest in mind, and you ask them the same question that you just asked me, and see what they tell you. And if they mean you any good, they're going to tell you almost exactly the same thing that I told you. See, the truth don't need any propping up, and the truth don't expire.
Ooh, if you don't preach right there, 'cause that's not saying. The truth don't need no help. Yes. Go ahead.
And
I'm sorry.
it doesn't go bad. It doesn't, it doesn't spoil. When you tell somebody the truth, you don't have to tell them, all right, look, don't go anywhere else, just listen to what I'm saying. No, if it's the truth, they can go, they can take it wherever they want to, and they'll find out that what you're saying is true. I had this coworker of mine. And she had her grandbaby. And her grandbaby, she would oftentimes, like want to grab and touch stuff like her keys and her cell phone. Well, it's like what my coworker was doing, she started telling her, okay, well, no, sweetie, that's hot. And her grandbaby, she touched the stove and found out the stove was hot, and she burnt her hand on the stove. And so, she said, stove, hot. So when she was telling her, that her keys were hot, that her cell phone was hot, well, her grandbaby, she was looking at, okay, I can't touch that because that's hot. Well, but then it's like when the grandbaby sees somebody else pick up the keys, and they don't drop them because they're hot, somebody else pick up the cell phone, and they don't drop it, because it's hot. The grandbaby started questioning, now, wait a minute now, you just told me that was hot, but, Jim over here, he picked up the cell phone, and he didn't burn his hand. See, you can't, and I had to tell her, see, you can't do that, because once they find out that you're lying about something, they're going to question everything that you say. So I know what you were trying to do is you were trying to keep her from taking and losing your keys or sticking your cell phone in the couch cushion, and you not being able to find it, but you're going about it the wrong way. Because as she gets older, she's gonna question everything that you say, because she found out, well, okay, those keys aren't hot, and the cell phone isn't hot. Now the stove is hot, but you told me these other things were, and now I found out that they weren't. So can I really trust what you're saying? My point is that when you tell your child the truth, and not just your child, any child, and that's what I was saying about, your children are not the only ones that need help. You can pour into the life of any child, especially, as I said, when you want the best for them, when you want to see them succeed, when you're not trying to steer them down the wrong path. When you realize that, oftentimes I have given kids ride to work, and my children will tell you this now. Most of the time that I have like little talks with them, we ride in a vehicle. Why? Because I have a captured audience. They can't just open the door and step out, because I'm going 30, 40 miles an hour. So they have to listen to me while we're in the vehicle. And there was this young lady in our church that was a good friend of ours' daughter, and sometimes for my kids and I, in fact, we would go and pick her up from work and take her home. Well, in that 10-minute drive home, some of the same stuff I was telling my kids, I told her. Because, as I said, just reinforcing those sort of values, reinforcing, some of the things that she need to be focusing on and doing. I tell kids all the time, I said, don't go to college just to say I went. If you're going to go to finish. And don't let anything deter you. Don't let anything get in your way. Anything that's keeping you from walking across the stage, you need to let that go. You need to put that off. You need to push that off until later. But go and get your education, because once you get it, they can't take that from you. So understanding that your other children, and that's one of the reasons why I do mentoring. Like just last week, I was speaking at my alma mater, Blood High School, and I was speaking to the seniors, and I shared with them a lot of stuff that I've already talked about tonight, because I realized that, look, there are some kids, they may not have a father in the house with them, or they may not have this sort of information being given to them. And I know that I myself, I would have wished to have somebody to tell me and share with me a lot of stuff that I'm sharing with them. And so, you have to give back. You can't just be, it's just about, my own little crew here, because if I don't help my community, who are my daughters going to marry? Who are my sons going to marry? If I don't instill or reach out beyond, in fact, the borders of my own home, am I really doing my kids justice? And it's not just about making a name for yourself, but it's also about helping somebody else. If you are in a position to help and don't, in fact, the Bible says, if you can do right and you don't do it, well, that's a sin. And so, for me, I tell people all the time, a lot of people are afraid to speak. I'm afraid not to. I mean, given everything that I feel that God has put in me, I mean, there's a weight of responsibility, that I carry in trying to, help not just my children, but any child that'll listen. And I know, you got some hard-headed children out there that don't want to listen. And but even that, you can't just call them hard-headed. And I really wish I wouldn't have said that. But there are things that they're going through that has them in that position. Let's go back to what I was saying earlier about understanding why are they upset? Why are they so angry? What's going on? Don't just label them as being, you can't do it or you won't make it. But why is it that you are like the way you are? And as I said, that's a whole nother discussion. But being willing to actually talk to young people and help them, to understand who they are and help them to answer that question, so when the world comes to them and says, you're a pimp, you're a gangbanger, you're a drug dealer, you're a homosexual, or even a prostitute. When the world tries to label them, instead of them picking up the label, they can tell the world who they are.
Yeah, I've seen more, and I've talked with more men who absolutely understand this. I wouldn't say all the way to the order of wifing and being lead in a biblical sense, because I think people are just so afraid. But the responsibility is already, it's already there. They got kids. They do everything except for take vows and have this public acknowledgement of the responsibility that they have, as if that's going to change anything. But when you have a parent that is obviously wanting to participate, I reached out to you in part because I had a father, and I have several men who are either ex-husbands or their boyfriends committed long-term boyfriends, and they just get so much drama about their manhood, and it's always related to the children. And for some reason, women feel like they own the kids, and I love my kids, and I do understand that I cannot have them by myself, and I do not have them by myself. But sometimes it feels like they are mine by myself. But I understand the need for that other person to have as much room and as much place with them as I do, because it's necessary for them. It don't have anything to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. And I think men feel the same way, but they catch so much hell. And it's sad to say. Women perpetuate this issue, and what they have, it's like a going joke or a running theme that if you leave her or you don't want to be with her and you actually move on with your life, that you're not going to get to see your kids, that you're going to be set up to be a weekend dad, that you're going to be manipulated out of the ability to be as much as you still can be, because you're literally not really under the roof, but emotionally still connected to that woman. And it's like guys almost are set up to not do it, and they check out. Like they check out and they say, well, you know, I have my own kids. I've even heard men say, I cannot find myself being a little league coach and helping someone else's child because I can't even get access to mine. It's like they refuse to still be the, you know, what they can be, because they can't change the mindset of this other person. And I know personally, I've dated men who I wanted to date them, but they couldn't even get over the fact that they understood the responsibility that comes with the woman with children and what my expectation of that is. And if they cannot give that to their own flesh and blood, they feel conflicted. They feel like I cannot be all of this with you and your children, and then I can't even get to my son. You know, it's like they're bound to that person in that situation. What do you say to those guys? Because I don't know what to say to them, except for, I understand. And
you know, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, and that was one of the reasons why I tried to reconcile, like, with my son's mother, you know, my oldest son's mother, you know, because I did not want that to be the case. But, you know, to those individuals, and, you know, I know that I mentioned, you know, scripture, and I mentioned, you know, about my relationship with God. I know that I've had to, there was a lot of praying that, you know, I had to do, especially, in fact, with my oldest son, and not just for him, but even for myself. But I still did everything I could. Every opportunity that I could be there for him, I was. You know, because like I said, I hadn't checked out because I knew what it's like to be raised without your father, and I didn't want my child to fall into that same category. So to those men, you know, even if you find a young lady that has children, and in fact you love her and you love her kids, but you may have a child somewhere, or you may have children somewhere that at this time you can't be in their life, don't let that keep you from being able, you know, to help, in fact, the people that you're with. Every opportunity that you can to be there for your kids, be there for them. But just because you can't be there with them every day, don't let that keep you from not helping someone else, not helping some other child. You know, because, you know, in fact, the whole thing about it takes a village, you know, to raise a child is true. And, you know, if we don't stand in the gap, even if it's not for our kids, but, you know, maybe for some other kids, then, I mean, what hope do we have? You know?
It's shocking the number of kids that don't, you know, I love my kids, and I think everybody who has kids should love their kids the most. You know, you should always start with giving as much as yourself to your own, and I do understand that. At the same time, it's hard for me not to love on my kids as friends the same way I love on them. Like, I expect that something in them is either close enough that made them friends to begin with, and that's why they're friends, or that they've been purposely placed. And I think about purpose in a lot of things, and some people just don't. And it took hardship, and for me to be at the bottom of not having access to anything, for me to realize, oh, this is orchestrated like this for me. So instead of fighting it, I got to work through it. The same thing is true with the kids. Like, it's amazing. Like, and this is without me even really knowing. My daughter's best friends at school, both of them have dads in the home per se, but they're deployed. They out of no force of anything, the friends that they are friends with have a similar background with there being a matriarch in the home and a patriarch that's just, you know, every now and then being able to be seen. And so they actually kind of semi-counsel each other with just the experience. They feel comfortable with that. They've had friends who've had dads in the home, active fathers in the home, and they don't get along as well. And I don't think that was just by coincidence. They are comfortable in that way. And, like, it's me, my dad was in the home, but he was just like a lamp. I mean, I love my daddy. I love my daddy, but he wasn't equipped with anything past the provision and protection. That was it. Like, he didn't know how to communicate love. He just didn't have that in his own home. He didn't have a whole lot of that in his life with a lot of other vices, so I can't even be mad at him. He gave me what he could, and he shows up every now and then, and it's that same extent. So I knew that there were some things that I would carry as a girl and as a young woman in needing, and so ironically, just like you said, in your earlier dating years, you realized you was picking these same women and having to be peeled off on because you just didn't want to lose a relationship. I was picking, not really picking, but I was drawn to people whose whole representation was strong provision, strong protection, but I lacked in needing this emotional connect. And like men, I don't know if they're like women. Like, women can see that clearly. They can actually write it down and take a picture and give classes on it, and every one of the men that they date fit into this. But men, I don't know if that's any different with you guys. You said that you were able to come to yourself and see, you know, man, what am I doing to myself? But do men actually, like, associate things? Because, you know, y'all kind of principle-based. Y'all don't have this exposed emotional part of yourself where you say, you know what, I'm feeling this kind of way about this choice or whatever. Or do you? Like, I don't know if y'all are that much different from us with choice.
And there again, even as I said earlier, you know, about getting to know yourself, knowing who you are, it really helps in working through that. See, oftentimes people who have a problem with themselves have a problem with everybody else. And if they, you know, if you don't settle the issues that, you know, you're dealing with, then they aren't going to go away by themselves. They're not magically going to disappear. If you don't address them, if you don't at least acknowledge them and then address them, and then even if you can't address them by yourself, you know, you need to get some help. But you can't acknowledge, or say you can't fix what you won't acknowledge.
Right.
And so you know, I know that even our parents, you know, they had their issues, and of course, well, in fact, we have ours. But if we're not willing to at least look at them, we aren't going to get any better. I think that by addressing them and by, in fact, looking at them, we can at least start the process. If you have a problem communicating, because I did earlier in my marriage, I kind of took a page, in fact, from my mom, because when she got upset, she stopped talking. Uh-huh. So guess what? When I got upset, I stopped talking. But then I started to realize, okay, this is going to cause an issue in my marriage simply because I'm not willing to open and to communicate with my wife. And I mean, it was causing a huge issue. But I knew that if I didn't address that and deal with that I was going to wind up losing my marriage. And there was some unresolved issues with, in fact, me and my mom, and I had to go and talk to her, and that was one of the it was one of the turning points in my marriage and in my relationship. If I can actually, when you call your parent up and tell them that you need to talk to them, of course, they have all kinds of things going through their mind, but okay, what do you talk about? But I knew that I had to go and deal with some emotional stuff that had been buried. And I mean, it was emotional, but I knew I wanted my marriage more than I wanted the comfort of not having to actually address and deal with that. And so I spent time, at least talking to my mom about that, trying to fix that. And I mean, it did a world of difference, for my marriage, because I stopped expecting stuff, from my wife that I should have got from my mom, because I was expecting, in fact, my wife to come in and just kind of plug in all those holes that I had. And she was looking at me like, okay, I can plug in this one, but I don't know about the other 38 you got.
What I said, that's huge. That right there is huge. Understanding that you're unspokenly expecting for someone to be something they can't. Like, we can't be your mom, and neither can a man really be our dad. But I can, and I hope this ain't too much disclosure. I can remember my ex telling me and comparing me to his mom, and I was always confused at how you could expect me to be something so separated, but the security, the needing, the mama gonna make it all right is really what he was saying. But those are some issues that still to this day he hasn't resolved with her. So there was no way I was going to ever be able to fill those shoes. Like, it was just, my stuff was just set up in a way that it just wasn't going to be a healthy, return. And I think I knew that it would, inevitably end. And we're about 30 minutes before the end of the show, I want to know whether or not there is a point where you can just, cause some women concede after the doctor tells them that they can't have children per se. Not that that's the essence of being a woman, but for some reason women think if I don't have a baby and I don't bring something into this world and I don't have that, there's a part of me that's missing. Some women feel the same way about marriage. If I don't have someone to ask me to be with them in life, then something of me and womanness is gone, when I think the opposite is true. Is there any part of that men think? Because to me, y'all seem like y'all can go with whatever the world throws to you, but or is that the same with you guys?
Well, in a sense, we are adaptable, but there are, again, different ages and different stages of life, different things become important. There are some people that say, I don't want to have kids. I think about that State Farm commercial. The guy said, I'm never getting married, and then he wound up getting married. We never have a kid. We wound up being pregnant. We never moved to the suburbs. And I mean, for everything that he said, never to, in fact, they wound up doing.
Right.
Right. But But at different stages of life, different things become important. And, you know, kind of in a different way, you know, for men, as far as men's biological clocks, 60, 70-year-old guys still fathering kids. So, it's not one of those things where it's like, okay, well, at some point in time, you're not going to be able to father kids. So yeah, in fact, they may have more leeway as far as that's concerned. But when it comes to women, on the other hand, everything else, I have a biological clock, and, after a certain age, pregnancy, becomes a lot more risky for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends upon what's important to a man. We always look at our parents, and our parents, they birthed us and they raised us, and that we become their legacy. At some point, in the average man's mind, that question is that, okay, what's my legacy? If I'm not going to, have a multi-million-dollar company or be the inventor for the cure for the common cold, what's my legacy? And most of the times it's our children. And, not just having kids say, okay, I got 10 kids out there, but having productive citizens, children that you can be proud of and say, yeah, that's my child. Not only did I bring them into the world, but I helped raise them, and I've turned out into society an individual that can be an asset and not a liability.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. So.
Well, I would like to say that I think I've learned a lot. And if I might say that I don't think that we're that strangely different. I think we may just still communicate things differently, man versus woman. And if you had, and I love these three different things to look for, things to know that you're going to be repeating or re-emphasizing with the age groups. If you were speaking to pre-pubescent, I have never been able to say that, pre-pubescent male, because let me tell you, just ironically, tomorrow at my son's school is what they're calling the growth and maturation program. It's been put off a couple of times just because of our snow days and stuff, but this, I'm learning. I didn't even know this stuff was coming, but it is in the syllabus, it's there. And what it is they're going to do some grown adult talking to these kids. They separate the boys from the girls, and they are going to teach them, of course, HIV and AIDS, and then about sex and puberty. It's not it's not in the formal program, and it has to be offered because it meets some of the requirements, I think, for the school. But it's offered, and I'm signing this hesitating because I know that the world has a bigger influence on minds than sometimes the closest people in your world, which are like family and stuff. But what is the best advice to say you could give to a parent like me of a 10-year-old boy who does have a working and healthy relationship with his dad, but with the majority of his time spent with me? I just want to know what I can do to just help strengthen him going into the manhood rather than being just a wimpy boy from him being raised by a mama.
Okay. Well, if there are two things. One, if there are other men around, that can also help pour into him, family members and men that you know and trust, and in fact, that's helpful, for him, in fact, to be able to actually talk to them, because in fact there may be things that he wants to talk about that he doesn't feel comfortable with talking to you about, and he want to talk to them. But as far as you as a single mother, some of the best advice that I could offer is that you talk to your son, and I mean, help him to understand. We grew up in an age to where there wasn't a whole lot of communication. You know, our parents told us, you know, don't do this or don't do that, and they didn't give us any reason why. But nowadays, we have to take the time to educate our children because we are in the information age. They have access to so much information, but they need more access to a heart, and they need to see our heart for them, even in the stuff that we share, even in the stuff that we tell them. And so just him knowing that I can go to my mom, in fact, that I can talk to my mom, and then even if I can't talk to her, she knows somebody that I can talk to, you know, to actually, you know, get my questions answered, you know, and really just kind of find my way, because if he's 10, in the next several years, he's going to go through so many changes. But one of the biggest things that you can do for him is, as best you can, give him as much insight as you can on females. Because if he's like I was at 10, y'all are a mystery. And to be honest, you think you still are. But but I mean, you know, really, that's one of the things that actually makes y'all so attractive, is that we can't figure you out. And, you know, don't lose that, because that's one of the things, you know, that really kind of draws men to women. But he's looking at stuff from a more analytical approach, as far as even, in fact, relationships and emotions. In fact, they may be there, but they're not high up on his list of priorities. Whereas for the female, emotions tend to be high up on the list of priorities, and I'm not going to say logic, but, you know, just kind of, you know, like, you know, y'all, sometimes y'all, you just want to do something. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care, you know, okay, what we have to do, this is what I want to do. Well, okay, if he has a hard time, in fact, reconciling that, because he's looking at it from the standpoint where I don't have enough money to take you to the movies and dinner, so we need to pick one, you know, or so he's trying to figure out, well, you know, why can't you see what I see? And so just, you know, just helping him, you know, to, you know, just giving him some sort of insight as to kind of how women think and how women operate. That's one of the best things that you can do for him. But also, you know, just talk to him, let him know that you're there for him, you know. And I mean, you know, just be honest with him, that because even as I said earlier in the call, I really don't think that, you know, that no one gets help with falsehoods and half-truths. You know, I've been honest with my kids. My middle daughter, in fact, she just went to the prom, went to her boyfriend's prom. And I, in fact, reminded her, you know, she's 15 and he's 17. Wonderful young man. You know, Daddy approves of him. But I told both of them, I said, when I was your age, me and her boyfriend's age, and when she and in fact, when my oldest son's mother was her age, we had a child. And like I said, I don't like ripping the bandage off that old wound, but
it's the truth.
My father talked to me about sex after my oldest son's mother was pregnant, and I sat there and I listened and I respected him and everything that he said. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, you know, this is a little too late.
It's too late.
You know, all the stuff that you're telling me now is a little too late because she's already pregnant. Okay. And so, I keep telling my daughter, especially my daughter, and I know they get embarrassed and I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to talk about that. I said, look, I would rather you be embarrassed now than you somewhere laying up in the hospital with your legs open, pushing a child out. And so, you know, we have to be willing, you know, to be vulnerable enough and to be honest enough with our kids, because if we don't tell them about the ditch we fell in, we can't get mad when they fall in it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
well,
you know,
I would like. I would love for I try to align with people who have similar, not that I'm trying to determine the life for my kids or anything like that, but I want them to have the influences that I'm at least influenced in a positive way with. So I will definitely keep that in the back of my mind concerning what to have exposure wise for my son. And I think I'm gonna have to go to this little. We didn't even have this class. Like, I don't even know why, but I guess it is. It's necessary. We didn't have AIDS either when it was my turn,
exactly.
To do that. So we have to. And the other thing is yes, they do. They have their Nooks. They have their Chromebooks. There is actually a part of the curriculum at school. They bring home these devices. They have access. I can look at everything that they've accessed and stuff, and they're looking up stuff. And I just look through it sometimes. I'm like, what was they looking up that for? And I know they're exposed because I'm not that old either. I know that some stuff is embarrassing, but we have to give them the opportunity to learn the truth rather than just what everybody else is thinking. Do you have any events coming up soon, or want to advertise for anything in the near future?
Well, I do want to invite each of your listeners. They can connect with me on Facebook. I think I'm the only Saccone Prince out there. And in fact, they can even can go to my website, which is SacconePrince.com. That's SacconePrince.com, and that's all like one word. I'm also on Twitter at Saccone_Prince, and on Instagram, I think that's at Saccone Prince on Instagram. But as far as events, I'm sorry?
No.
Well,
go ahead.
In fact, I was saying, as far as any events coming up, I don't have any per se, but I do want to invite all of your listeners to check out my YouTube channel, because I have several of my speeches up there. You can actually go to YouTube and just search for Saccone Prince. My channel name is CPINET 2000. That's CPI Net 2000. But if you just go to YouTube and search for Saccone Prince, put it in quotation marks. I try to use the same picture, so in fact you'll be able to actually find me. Yeah. But on my channel, I have several of my speeches and even some of the messages from when I was on the radio and all. So and I'll be happy to connect with them. And I'm looking for speaking engagements. I'm actually in the process now of finishing up a training series, which I'm so excited about. I don't know if your listeners know who Les Brown is, but Les Brown has trained the guy that's training me. And, I mean, it's been phenomenal. In fact, the guy that's training me, his name is Ruben West. And next month I'm actually going to to Bloomington, Illinois for a live training session with Ruben and my other Black Belt speakers, classmates. And, I mean, it's been phenomenal just to be able to, to understand that our words can change lives. And I go from doing 3D animation to motivational speaking primarily because there's a voice that I have and there's a message that I have which I know needs to get out and people need to hear. And even a lot of stuff we talked about tonight on the call about introducing you to yourself. I think there are a ton of people out there that have yet to walk themselves through that process. And that's one of the things I believe, is my calling, is to help people, to just take a retrospective look at their life and at who they are so they can settle the issue as far as who they are. And I think if more of us did that, we'll be at a better place in the world.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Empire. A little quick snippet before we
Even
end
though
the
the
show.
Empire was born out of my personal experience and endeavors, the Empress welcomes everyone into the Empire. If you would like to be a guest, a co-host, or simply want to suggest a topic to be discussed, contact me by email at empresscooperdavison@gmail.com or by my website at www.theempress.com. I'm here. I'm you.
I have enjoyed myself, and I feel like I know a lot more, not even a little, a lot more about men and man from a man's perspective. Things that stuck with me is just knowing who you are first. I mean, that's just like, you got to start there. If you don't start there, you're starting off from a place that's just kind of not solid, foundation not really full. And then when you do know who you are, you're able to offer more of yourself. Now, that's just applicable to people, human beings, period. Just whole. You're whole so you can give a whole self to your responsibility in life. And the best, I think, that is tweetable, you need to tweet this. Manhood is being responsible, period. You know, you shouldn't have to have a baby and take care of it to be said to be a man, or have to make a certain dollar amount to be a said man. You being responsible for yourself and your decisions, whether those are positive or negative, is what man is. And actually, one man is the same thing. I'm going to need you to understand that the decisions that you make affect more than just yourself. And even if you don't have children, and I just am an advocate for men having babies, because we end. That legacy ends if you don't have children. I'm not saying it's going to make a whole bunch of them just because you can, Chris Brown and Jay-Z. But when you do, just own up to that, and being present and knowing who you are when you're there just speaks to the gravity of the entirety of the situation. I mean, you can't have a ton of money. Like, I kind of feel bad for this Jay-Z kid, because, yeah, you get a settlement. But I want more for this young man to have his father, to have the experience that someone has actually chosen you, or that you're actually loved. Like, I want that. But, you know, I'm not saying it can't happen. He is 21 years old, but he has still got a wound the size of his father in him. And if it never gets filled, he will constantly be throwing things in that for the rest of his life. This little song that I found, it's just, I fell in love with it. It's called Promises by Jahine. Jane, I don't know how to say her name because she's Asian, female, and I love the music that she has out. But the beginning of the song just kind of took me off guard, had me crying, because I've listened to it like 100 times since I stumbled upon it a couple of months ago, and I've been trying to download it forever. And it's just listen to it. We're going to have some shows in April that will speak to even a more simpler existence, just plain relationships, how to just be in one, defining what they are. And, you know, it'll be a good place to start off if we at least know who we are from our daddy's faith. Good night from the Empress.